Perek Mishna. We previously learned that when an oven becomes tamei, all of its handles become tamei. And handle is not just a literal handle, which provides a portability to the vessel. It serves the vessel by making it portable, but any theoretical handle, anything that adds functionality to the kli is also considered a handle, and it also becomes tamei with the vessel. The Mishnah is discussing the definition of a handle, of a theoretical handle. Moisef hataner, the addition to a tanner. In those days they would have a tanner, but in addition to the tanner, they would build on top of it a tall rim, similar to the Ateres Kira, and this was just to retain the heat of the oven. And therefore the Mishnah says, Moisev a tanner, the addition to a tanner, shel balei batim, of a house owner's oven, is tar. The addition is tar because it's just made to retain the heat of an oven. It doesn't add functionality, it just retains the heat. It doesn't add a function. And therefore it's tar, it's not considered a theoretical handle. The Mishnah goes on to say, V'shel nachtainim, but of a nachtaim, of a baker, the addition to a baker's oven is tamei. Mipnei, because shu soymech alav, he leans on it as ashpud, the spit. They would lean their spit that they would roast meat on, and they would use the addition to the oven not only to retain the heat, they would lean their handle on it. And that adds a function to the oven, and therefore it's considered a theoretical handle, and therefore it's tamei. Now, although we saw in Perek Gimel of this Perek, by the Beis HaPach, the Beis HaTavlin, the pockets connected to an oven to hold the spices and to hold the oil, is not considered a theoretical yad, because to hold spices is a completely different function than the function of the oven. The oven was meant to bake, and those pockets were just meant to hold spices, which is a completely different function, and therefore it's not considered adding a function to the oven, because it doesn't advance the goal of the oven. Nevertheless, in our case, this Moisev Tanner does advance the same goal of the oven, because it holds the spit, and the spit was made to roast in the oven. So therefore it's considered servicing the oven, and it's considered a yad, a theoretical handle, and it's mekabel tumah. And if the oven becomes tamei, all its handles and this addition to the oven will also become tamei. Now the Mishnah is going to bring down Rabbi Yochanan Sandler's shita. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler is going to argue with this, because he says that the reason why the addition of the tanner becomes tamei is not because it holds the spit, because Rabbi Yochanan Sandler holds that the definition of a theoretical handle is that it has to serve the same exact function of the oven, of the kli that it's attached to. And since the oven is meant to bake breads, for this addition to be considered a handle, it also has to bake breads. And therefore, let's read the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler says, Mipnei, the addition is only tamei because shehu oifebo, it was used to bake kishu nitchak, when he was pressed. When the baker was pressed because he had many customers, he would actually use this addition not only to retain the heat, but even to bake breads on the walls of it. And therefore, that's the only reason why it's considered a theoretical yad, because it was used as to advance the same exact goal as the oven, which was to bake. The Mishnah goes on and says, similar to this, where we see the definition of a theoretical handle is only when it serves the exact purpose of the kli itself, is the musaf hayira, the addition to the pot, shel sholke zesim, of cookers of olives. People who would cook olives, they would have a pot where they would cook the olives in, and they would have an addition to it so if the water would boil, the bubbles wouldn't boil over. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, that doesn't make it into a theoretical yad, because it's not advancing the same exact goal of the vessel, which is just to hold the olives. Nevertheless, this addition had a side benefit that it can also hold the olives if the olives went above the vessel level. And therefore it did also serve the same function that the original vessel did, and therefore it can become tamei. So kayotzei, similar to this, the moisef hayira, the addition to the pot, shel sholke zesim, of cookers of olives, is tamei. Because besides for just keeping in the bubbles, it had a side benefit of holding the olives and olive oil from spilling out, and that's the same exact purpose of the oven, and therefore it's considered a theoretical handle. The Mishnah ends off by saying, V'shel tzaboim, but the addition to the pot of dyers of clothing, is tahor. Because dyers of clothing would have a pot where they would put the clothing in to dye, and they would boil the clothing in the dye. They would also build in addition to this pot, so that it couldn't boil over. However, the dyers didn't want the dye to touch the addition, because the addition actually ruined the dye, and therefore the only function of this addition was just to hold in the bubbles, not to hold the dye, and therefore it's not accomplishing the same goal. It's not advancing the same goal as this vessel, which is to hold dye, and therefore the Mishnah rules, V'shel tzaboim, the addition to the dyer's pot, is tahar. So in summary, the Tanakam of this Mishnah holds that the definition of a theoretical handle is anything that adds a function which serves the general function of the vessel. And Rabbi Yochanan Sandler holds that the theoretical handles have to serve the exact function of the original vessel. Now it's your turn to read the Mishnah.